Hey everyone, Joey here, and today we're going to be doing a full review on the new MANGMI Pocket Max, which is this beast right here. If you're wondering what took me so long, I only just got this Sunday night, and then I've been putting it through the paces, and then I decided to wait for the pricing, and now we have the actual review, because I was never going to do a review without pricing. So, the review is going live right when this product goes live, so you can actually go and purchase it if you want to after the end of this video. Well, let's get into the actual review to see if it is something that's worth your money and if you want to buy one. For the very quick, too long, didn't watch of today's video, the MANGMI Pocket Max is a fantastic handheld in so many ways, but it has some intense competition to deal with, and that may make this a great purchase down the line or in very specific situations. Let's start with the specs. The MANGMI Pocket Max uses the Snapdragon 865 processor, which we have seen many times in the past year with the Retroid Pocket 5, Retroid Pocket Flip 2, Retroid Pocket Mini, and the AYN Thor Lite. That means any videos that you have seen of those devices and the performance of those devices matches what we have here today. I myself did a ton of videos on the Retroid Pocket 5 alone, showing that yes, you can play all PS2 at native at least, but mostly upscaled. You can play all GameCube at native at least, but mostly upscaled. All 3DS at native at least, but again, mostly upscaled, and so on. The 865 can do a decent number of Switch emulation, some PS3 emulation, and some Game Hub as well. But these systems are where the processor starts to fizzle out a little bit when you compare it to other options. Long story short, you absolutely can make use of the power and screen of this device, which the screen is gorgeous. We'll talk about in a bit. We have 8 GB of RAM, which is more than enough for what this plays, and 128 GB of internal storage, which, as usual, will be the limiting factor for the emulators that only use internal storage and HD texture packs and so on. We do have active cooling, but it isn't the best fan in the world. I'm somebody who is super susceptible to bad fans, and this isn't the greatest. It has massive amounts of whine. The MANGMI Air X also didn't have the best fan in the world, but in both cases, you don't really need to use it that often. With the Pocket Max, this will only matter if you plan on pushing the device to its limits. Otherwise, I found that I could leave it on silent mode and get on with it. Switch can get a little bit warm, but wasn't anything too hot from what I found. So silent does cover a lot of bases. But let's take a look at the fan. The screen is the standout feature here though. We have a 7-inch AMOLED 144 Hz 1920 by 1080 screen. Absolutely gorgeous screen, and it is great to play on. It is a little bit saturated, but I kind of like that. Despite being 144 Hz, you do have the option to adjust the refresh rate to other options like 120 Hz, 60 Hz, and so on. Although there isn't a lot of reasons why you would ever use this, except for very specific situations, because you do want the high refresh rate. You want 120 Hz or 144 Hz for the response time and input latency benefits that you get, which includes actual retro games that are playing at 60 FPS. You'll get those benefits on a 144 Hz screen. One thing to note, though, is they are not set refresh rates. Unfortunately, they aren't exactly 144 or 120 and so on. And so that does mean that those susceptible to those little stutters from refresh rates not matching like that, you're going to notice that a little bit. That being said, for better frame pacing, you're going to want to be in 120 Hz mode instead. But I can see the 144 Hz mode getting some use cases for streaming and so on. We do have video out through USB-C, and that seems to work out just fine. I use their settings to adjust the resolution and frame rate and so on, and you can also charge while doing video out, and of course connect an external Bluetooth controller and so on. That being said, there is no way to actually turn off the device's screen while you're using video out, at least that I could find. So another thing that I think MANGMI needs to add to their software is the ability to turn off the screen. Now, on the speaker front, I am not sure exactly what is happening here, but there is distortion at all levels, not just the highest level, but even at medium, and it just sounds off. There's something really wrong with the speakers here. I can't pin it down, I am not an audiophile, but I can tell that there is something really, really wrong here. So let's have a quick listen, and maybe you can help identify it, and maybe it's something that MANGMI can fix. Now, the MANGMI Pocket Max has a Wi-Fi 6 chip, which does mean that it does pretty good streaming. It narrowly misses out on being able to do 6 GHz bands though, and so it is limited to 5 GHz bands, since you would need a Wi-Fi 6E chip to do 6 GHz. But streaming performance is actually pretty great here. It's not going to compete with a Snapdragon 8 Elite or a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, but it is only a few milliseconds off in decoding latency and feel. However, two massive issues here with Artemis streaming is the combo hotkey of L1 plus R1 plus start plus select to exit conflicts with the MANGMI launcher, because by holding start for 2 seconds, you open the MANGMI launcher, but you also need to do this combination to exit Artemis. And so they conflict with each other. I wasn't able to exit Artemis easily because it kept conflicting with opening up the MANGMI launcher. This is something I hope they can fix. They just have to remove this hotkey from being used and maybe set it to something else, I guess. However, the other issue is the placement of start and select. It's at the very bottom. So you're left trying to finagle your hand into pushing start and select L1 and R1 to exit Artemis, and that just creates a whole big disaster. I don't know if there's any other use cases where start and select as a hotkey might be an issue, but Artemis was definitely one. On top of this whole hold start for the MANGMI launcher to launch affected mapping the controls in RetroArch. You can't actually map start in RetroArch because it wants you to hold the start button, but when you hold the start button, it opens up the MANGMI launcher. So this is something easily fixed through an over-the-air update, and I hope they do so. Then we have the usual USB-C, headphone jack, and micro SD card slots. The operating system here is Android 13, and MANGMI has included quite a bit of features here. They have a lot here that other manufacturers actually don't even have, and they've done a lot of work on this. From the swipe down, you can turn on their sidebar, which does show you quite a bit of information. There's a few set modes here, and even a streaming mode, which affects the performance and the fan of the device. You can also adjust the refresh rate of the screen or turn on their performance overlay. One thing that is unfortunately missing though is per application settings, which is something that Retroid and AYN both have. I would like to see MANGMI do that too, because it is more of a necessity here on this system where you have different performance modes, different fan modes, and different screen refresh rates. So it is something that they should add down the line. On the gamepad tab, you can adjust your layouts, turbo fire, joystick curves, and so on. Even play with the trigger settings if you want to. You can also access the sidebar by long pressing the home button, which helps. Now, I mentioned it before, but they do have their own built-in launcher, like most manufacturers do, and it's decent. You can push select to scan your SD card for ROMs, and it found most of mine, and then it added them straight to the launcher. But there is no artwork or any way that I could find to customize this launcher to set what emulator opens what and artwork and all that fun stuff. So it is a little bit bare bones, but it's better than it was on the MANGMI Air X from what I remember. Then we jump into the Android settings and the handheld settings. Some of the same options we have seen already, but a lot more, like customizing the back buttons of M1 and M2 to whatever you want. You can also adjust the screen temperatures and the video output settings. Further adjust the joystick LEDs to whatever you want. Use device spoofing, which is the first time I think I've seen this. I haven't actually tried it, but it seems like it may help with some games that have trouble with devices that aren't spoofed. Then you have a ton of power saving options to conserve battery if you want to. And lastly, we have the system updates as well as the app updates of what MANGMI includes. So like I said, there is a lot here. Now for Syncthing users, you might be curious about how this handles Android's data storage. And unfortunately, it doesn't have the access that Retroid and AYN devices have. I wasn't able to get Syncthing to work with anything behind Android data storage, either using WebGUI or the file picker, but it's usually WebGUI is what you want to get this to work, and it just doesn't. One very annoying thing though is the rumble. The rumble is way too strong and a bit annoying. I ended up turning off the vibration completely, otherwise it was just way too much for me. Then we get to the battery, and I did a few tests here. The MANGMI Pocket Max has an 8,000 milliamp hour battery, which is massive. And so, like you'd expect, it can do quite a bit with it. As usual with my battery tests, I do them properly by doing a proper drain from 100% to 0%. Yeah, that takes more time, but I find that if you don't do this, you get the wrong numbers. And with these tests, I was in 144 Hz mode, 100% brightness, 10% audio, quiet fan mode, and balanced performance mode. For Nether SX2 at a 3x upscale with widescreen on, using Dragon Quest VIII as the test game, I saw a battery life of 7 hours and 26 minutes, which is fantastic. Then, for Switch emulation, using Breath of the Wild at native resolution, I saw a battery life of 4.5 hours, which is, again, really good battery life. Because of the lack of time that I had with this device, those were the only two tests I could actually do, but they paint the picture. This has a long battery life, which is what you need to know. It's got great battery life. Let's go ahead and take a look at the actual device now, because I think this is where it shines. First, we have TMR full-sized joysticks. And yeah, as you would expect, these are awesome. It's super nice to get an actual handheld like this with actual full-size sticks, and you feel the difference immediately in games. I'm a massive fan of these, and I hope they continue to show up on other devices. Then we have a really good D-pad here. I would have liked a bit more of an offset between the controls like the Odin 2 Portal has, but I don't have any issues using the D-pad for any retro games. The device is big enough and comfortable enough that it doesn't make it an issue at all. On the opposite side, we have some nice tactile buttons here that aren't loud at all, and they have fantastic feedback for using them. My only complaint with the buttons is they were a bit too close together. I would have liked to see them a little bit more spread out, but I wouldn't say that's a deal breaker. But we also come to an extra feature here with the Pocket Max, and you have the ability to swap out the D-pad and buttons for a separate set by just pulling them off. And this second set is just micro switch. So you get a micro switch D-pad and micro switch buttons. That's it. That's all you get. Look, I don't want to call a feature useless, as I'm sure there is somebody out there that's like, oh, this is the best feature in the world and I really want that. But a better way to do this would have been having the option for the sticks to be replaceable too. So people who want D-pad top can swap it with the sticks or whatever. Like, there is so many other ways that they could have done this to be better. And I think the current implementation of just swapping them for micro switch options is something they could have done without. They could have saved a little bit money, maybe hit a lower price point, which we're going to talk about later, is something that really matters. If they didn't include this, is my guess. But as is, I don't think this really adds much. Then we have the home and back buttons, bottom left, and start and select, bottom right, which I am not a very big fan of, but that's how they did it. At the top, we have pretty silent bumpers if you tap them on the sides, but they get louder the more you tap them towards the top of the device. Then we have analog triggers, which feel fine and seem to do just fine. They have nice resistance, and I don't have anything positive or negative to say. They feel like analog triggers. On the back is the fan intake and our back buttons. But let's jump over to comfort now, and the comfort of this device is actually fantastic. This is really comfortable. They put all of the right ergonomic grips and curves and everything that it fits perfectly in my hands. I feel comfortable using it. I don't think this is something that needs a grip. I don't think this is anything that needs a TPU shell. This is very comfortable. The little bumps on the back, the little whatever you want to call them, baby grip bumps, feel great. This is very comfortable. Since we're going to be doing a lot of comparisons today with the Odin 2 Portal for a lot of different reasons, I find this implementation to be comfortable more than the Odin 2 Portal is by default. And I find it to be more comfortable than the Odin 2 Portal with a grip. So that tells you where I find the comfort and ergonomics of this device to be. That being said, I do find the Portal wins out a little bit on the offset of the stick and D-pad, but it isn't a major thing here. Long story short, the Pocket Max is, in my eyes, extremely comfortable. And so let's take a look at some gameplay here. Like I said before, this processor is a known quantity by now for all it can do, but we can do a very quick overview of what it actually does. Obviously, all of the RetroArch systems play just fine. That includes Nintendo 64 and upscaled, which is usually a problem child, but it isn't here. That also goes for Sega Saturn, lots of room to play Saturn games if you want to. For PlayStation Portable, using PPSSPP, you can upscale games easily to 4X or higher and play whatever you want. It's a great screen and a great device for PSP. Then we look at some 3DS games, and I have a full showcase again on how to play those on this processor, but there is just no issues upscaling games to 4X and playing them. Like the AYN Thor Lite, 3DS is a breeze on this device and processor. There's no problems at all. Then we jump over to GameCube and Wii, and for the most part, this is just a set to 3X upscale and forget type system. There is and can be some problem games here and there where you might need to drop down that upscaling to 2X or 1X. But for the most part, this has no issues at all running upscaled GameCube or Wii games. PlayStation 2 is a carbon copy of that. PS2 has a lot more problem games that you will have to drop down that upscaling to 1X to get those games to run, if you can. Otherwise, it is pretty much a set to 3X and forget for a lot of games. There is a ton of games you can play on this device. There is so many, up to PlayStation 2 and GameCube. After this, though, is where the processor will struggle or where you'll run into the limits of this device. Switch, PlayStation 3, and GameHub, and so on. Not to say that you can't play a lot of games here. You absolutely can. There's a lot that you can play. But we are now at the limit of what this device can do comfortably. And so these aren't the systems that I would suggest that you buy this device for. Think of them as extra benefits, things that you can play around with and test out and see if you get good experiences with. Long story short, on the Pocket Max, it's got a lot of power, and I don't think anybody would be unhappy with what this can do. But we have to end off here with the price discussion, and I purposely left this towards the end because this is the biggest piece of the puzzle, and so we have to discuss it with a lot of different things in mind. The MANGMI Pocket Max's early bird price is $199 for 72 hours. So 72 hours from when this video goes live, you are set for $199. It is $220 for early bird and $242 for retail. Now, in a vacuum, without a certain other device's sale currently going on, which we're going to talk about in a minute, I would say that the early bird and the early bird prices are great for what you're getting here. This handheld is premium. It has power, it has fantastic specs, great sticks, great software. It has nailed pretty much everything that it is trying to do, and it has the added benefit of being one of only 2 good 7-inch Android devices on the market. Android handhelds at least. The 7-inch screen is the feature here. It is one of the main reasons why they can charge the prices that they can charge, because the only other option in the world is an Odin 2 Portal. And while I do think the retail price is a bit high, I think the early bird and the super early bird are more than reasonable. But the elephant in the room is the AYN Odin 2 Portal exists, and it is currently $249 until February 25th. It has been going in and out of stock frequently, but you can get one if you just wait a little bit. After that, things can and likely will change, but for the very first few weeks of this device, it has the competition of the best Android handheld on the market, in my opinion, for $50 and under in price difference. Just to do a very quick comparison between the two devices, the Odin 2 Portal has a better processor, better fan, better battery life, better Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, better Syncthing and Android data support, it weighs less, and it is a known quantity handheld on the market since it's been around for the last year. The MANGMI Pocket Max, however, has better sticks, better comfort, and it is a few dollars less. But it isn't a known quantity handheld. I think the MANGMI Pocket Max is fantastic, and I can see a lot of reasons why I would recommend this. Also, it's MANGMI's second device, which is absolute insanity. They're doing a lot of good things here, better than manufacturers that have been doing it for years. That's worthy of a lot of praise. But while the AYN Odin 2 Portal is $249, there isn't a lot of times where I could recommend this over the Odin 2 Portal, even if it's a $50 difference between the two. There's a lot there with the Portal that make it a better purchase over the MANGMI Pocket Max. Now, what does that mean when the Portal has stopped being for sale and it's not $249 anymore? I don't know. I don't like the retail price of the MANGMI Pocket Max. I think it's a little too expensive. I think $199 and $220 are the right prices for what this can do. $220 I can live with. I can deal with that. But the problem is, again, it's AYN's sale right now with the Odin 2 Portal. That really puts a hamper on things of what they're doing here, and it isn't MANGMI's fault at all. It's honestly just the nature of the beast and the timing of this release that is the major problem here. But otherwise, yeah, if you want my review on the MANGMI Pocket Max, it's an easy recommend for me. There's a lot of things that it's doing here, a lot of things that I really like, and so I can't sit here and say it's not a great device because I think it is. It's just going to matter on where it fits in for a lot of people, pricing-wise, compared to the Odin 2 Portal and all of that situation. So otherwise, easy recommend on my end. So that's going to be it for this one. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me on the Discord to talk all about handhelds. Support me through YouTube membership if you like my stuff. And hope you all have a good one.